Hello and good morning to all of you around the world. I want to welcome you again to another edition of This Morning with Soulivity, broadcasting live from our studio right here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and on KMET, 1490 AM radio in Southern California. You know me, I'm Brian Wesley Johnson, and I'm your host for the show, but I'm also joined today by an amazing and beautiful co-host, Sheila Applegate. Good morning, Sheila.
Good morning.
Man, we've got a great topic today. Something that I think is appropriate um, about things that are happening here in the United States and goes well with one of our credos of battling fear and ignorance. But we'll get to that in a moment. But Sheila, how was your weekend?
I had a great weekend. Family time, my
Yeah.
niece's graduation party and another sister staying over for the weekend. So it
hmm
was a lot of fun,
Oh, that's
very
nice.
active.
That's
Yeah.
nice. That's
How
nice.
about
Yeah,
you?
it was great. Completely forgot that, I knew Juneteenth was here
Mhm.
and, we celebrated it yesterday. Um, but that back to back, like Father's Day and then Juneteenth,
Juneteenth. Yeah.
while you're sick, because everybody, I think everybody knew that I was kind of sick over the weekend. But yeah, it was like, it was like, oh, it's like, why do I have to be sick over a 3-day weekend? You know,
Right. Yeah.
Especially on such an important holiday like Juneteenth. So
How did you celebrate it?
so, again, I was recovering. So,
Right.
watch some programming on TV. Of course, we have our Soulivity kind of information that we sent out to everybody to make sure that they uh, were knowledgeable about things of
Hmm.
Juneteenth. And that was basically it. I mean, I was kind of recovering from, yeah,
Right.
from all this stuff. So, yeah, yeah. Did you celebrate it all yesterday?
I didn't. A lot of the
Yeah.
events were, I
Yeah.
mean, except for acknowledging it and
Mhm.
and thinking about it.
Yeah.
A lot of the events were over the weekend, and I was so distracted that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't able to get to anything.
Well, there's a lot to be distracted about going on right now, just to be clear. Um, as I said, that we have a great topic, an important topic that's happening today that we're going to be talking about. But before we get to that, just want to remind our viewers, especially for today, because we really want your feedback and voice. We want your questions, your comments, your thoughts. Just post them live to our chats on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll include you in the conversation. We'll even post you right on our live feed to get your thoughts in here. So, as I said before, we have an important topic today. And, Sheila, I was thinking about this. We were talking offline before we came on the show. I was thinking that, we try to make sure that we talk about a wide range of topics, wh-
Mhm.
which includes, people of different walks of life, different cultural backgrounds. I mean, part of these conversations is to also educate, right?
Right.
Um, well, as we were talking about all this in the wake of Juneteenth, the fact that there's policies that help support specifically African Americans in receiving higher education as well as employment opportunities, it seems as though from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing around the country that this is now part of one political party warring against diversity, equity, inclusion. And um it kind of it for me personally, knowing what I know about our history, my history, in terms of
Mhm.
being African American, it kind of hit me hard.
Mhm.
And I said, well, if it's hitting me hard, we need to talk about it,
Right. Yeah.
you know. And so decided to do so today. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And so again, this is an important topic. I have my own thoughts about it. Sheila, you have your own thoughts about it, but to our audience members, we want to know what you think about this stuff too.
Mhm.
So again, it's we love a dialogue. We want to have that discussion, and I know there's a lot of feelings about this. So please join into our conversation today. So where do we begin? Well, let's begin. Case in point with an NBC News story that was reported on Friday, where all state funded colleges and universities in Texas will have to close their diversity, equity, and inclusion offices under a measure signed into law by Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Now, just bear with me, folks, because this is a little bit of a long read. The law, which one of its sponsors in the Texas State Senate called the most significant ban on diversity offices in higher education in the country, comes as the U.S. Supreme Court later this month is widely expected to ban colleges and universities from considering race as a factor in their admissions decisions. Now, under the Texas law signed by Abbott last Wednesday, a public college or university that does not certify it is in compliance with the measure would not be able to spend state funds allocated to it. It also mandates that the state officials every 2 years through 2029 conduct studies to gauge the impact of the law on students broken down by race. It will also look at the rates of application, acceptance, matriculations, retention, and graduation, along with grade point averages. The law does not explain the reasoning for this conducting of the studies. Now, the law is the latest salvo from Texas Republican lawmakers and Abbott, also a Republican, and comes as critics assail diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, as efforts that are divisive or anti-white, while proponents say they can help people from different backgrounds learn to work together. Woo! So I'll just go to you first, Sheila. What's your reaction so far?
So I have an intellectual and emotional reaction to the idea of
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
but I just also usually we go deep into it and then we pull back up to maybe the higher perspective. But there's so much of this happening right now.
yeah.
I feel like when we dive in, we have to do it consciously with the knowing that they're trying to distract us. They're
Right,
trying to keep us from moving forward and to, deplete our energy and
right,
to, put people against each other. So,
right,
I have more about that to talk about after, but we just need to go into all of these situations remembering that they're trying to manipulate us.
right,
And then
right.
also know that I was really glad you brought the topic up because
Mm,
knowing that I don't dive into everything, but I did read more on this and I had more feelings about it,
hmm.
including, I mean, obviously, I think it's ridiculous and not
Right,
helpful, right? Like, I
right,
mean, it's not cool. And it has a huge impact on everyone
right.
because if we don't have, well, freedom in education to do what it needs to do to create the best platform and also inclusion so that we can have that diversity of understanding. We're a global world now.
Right.
We can't go back to separation. Like the world has already been opened up through the internet and it's going to keep getting bigger.
I was thinking about this today, and the one thing that came up was, and I'll probably repeat this later, so everybody sue me if I if I repeat it twice.
We need
Um,
repetition.
exactly. I was thinking about the history of NASA, right?
Mhm.
We hold up NASA as one of the greatest achievements in terms of of a of an agency or administration that comes together to do the quote unquote impossible.
Mm-hmm.
The things that NASA has done over its life would not have been able to be done without diversity, equity,
Right.
and inclusion.
Right.
Right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they have internally done studies on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace based upon people's cultural and historic backgrounds. That people, diversity brings a wider range of thought. Everybody doesn't think the same way about stuff. That's
Right.
the whole point. And so if you don't have policies like that support diversity and equity and inclusion within, number one, your educational system,
Mm-hmm.
students are missing out on, the wealth that brings to their feet how to deal with different situations, because they may not have the same cultural background, and then they see it through someone else's eyes and they go, oh wow, I didn't know I could solve that problem that way.
Right.
Right. And so
Right.
this is both for the students and for teachers, because this is also part of that thing where closing these DEI offices also, you know, strips away people from different backgrounds teaching and being part of the process of educating our children. And there are children, they're just not white men or white women or any specific race or gender or sexual orientation. They're all a mix.
Mm-hmm.
And so why not teach that way? And so again, I agree with you, Sheila, that this is, you know, uh, a distraction against what really may be going on here. And again, why are we talking about this on Soulivity and then on this morning with Soulivity? Because one of our credos is to battle fear and ignorance, as I said before,
Right.
and and becoming self-aware and aware of people who may not look like you or have the same history as you is important.
It
It
is.
it bridges the
Yeah.
gap. Go ahead.
Right. Well, and I think it's important to understand that as we read deeper into this topic, it's not just about affirmative action. That's one
Correct.
small piece. This is
Correct.
about teaching about different cultures. It's about
Right.
including that in the curriculum as well as socially.
Correct.
Like the one article said, can we even celebrate Christmas? Or any of these,
Right.
or talk about what they
Right.
are.
Right.
And we can't if we follow these actions they're
Absolutely.
putting forward.
Absolutely. As we come up on our first break, I'm just going to read these two quick statements from different people. This comes from Senator Brandon Creighton, a Republican who was one of the bill's authors. He said, Texas is leading the nation and ensuring our campuses return to focusing on the strength of diversity, which is great,
Mhm.
and promoting a merit-based approach where individuals are judged on their qualifications, skills, and contributions. And then Paulette Granberry Russell, the president of the Association of Diversity Offices in Higher Education, said that this was a sad occasion for all students at Texas public universities. By dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and offices at these institutions, Texas lawmakers have chosen to prioritize a political agenda instead of the success of our students. She said all students, regardless of race, benefit from a diverse student body, and that her organization would not stop working for Texas universities to be increasingly accessible and inclusive. Wow.
Yeah.
So listen, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about where did this all come from? Let's put this in context, everybody. Where did DEI kind of first appear? And if you're thinking that it appeared in the 1960s, guess what? You're going to be surprised by the answer. We'll be right back with more of This Morning with Soulivity.
Have you ever asked the question, If I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
And we're back with more of This Morning with Soulivity. We are talking about the war against diversity, equity, and inclusion here in the United States by some of our political class. We got a comment in that I wanted to share with you from Darren Jaff. Again, it just goes to the importance of understanding why DEI is amazing, and that should be part. He said, I attended the Leaning into Leadership at the U.S. Department of Transportation last week. And DEINA, where A stands for accessibility, was a core principle. It was very eye-opening as an upcoming leader and a liberal white male that DEINA needs to be so emphasized today. Wow. Thank you for that, Darren. Again, I mean, there's so many important pieces around this that we can't stop talking about it. I mean, again, this isn't just about um, uh, race. I'll put it that way. It isn't just about race. It is about the inclusion, diversity, inclusion, and equity of race, gender, sexual orientation. I mean, it goes across a wide range of different things. Also, and accessibility also includes special needs people, right?
Right.
Because they also get excluded from opportunity. So, it's kind of a check on making sure that we are living up to I would say, spiritual ideals of our founders of our country. Let's talk a little bit about where did DEI education come about. And Sheila, I know you probably know about this because you got the link.
I'm prepared. Yes.
Well, you'd be surprised to know that DEI did not originate in the 1960s or even the 1950s under civil rights. It actually dates all the way back to the 18th century. Pretty cool, right?
It is. Yeah.
In the case of Anthony Benzet, who was born in 1713, he was a Quaker school teacher and an abolitionist in the 18th century in Philadelphia, who rebutted the idea that DEI measures in schools are antithetical to the egalitarian ideals and Enlightenment values upon which America was founded. Benzade it was known to historians of Quakerism and abolitionism, yet his work and the pivotal role teaching within it deserves greater prominence in contemporary debates over education. For him, education was a form of social justice. He intended his teachings to prove that the notion entertained by some that blacks are inferior in their capacities is a vulgar prejudice. At a time when schooling was often reserved for children in privileged classes, historian Nancy Slocum Hornick said Benzet believed that the instruction of all children was the proper concern of the state in its best interest. Now, as early as 1750, he taught evening classes to enslaved children in his home. And in 1754, he founded the first secondary school for girls in America. In an era where girls and women enjoyed few liberties and were typically only educated for domestic life. Then in 1770, he persuaded the Quakers to establish the first free day school for African children, slave and free, in Philadelphia. And a century before the spread of publicly supported education, Benzet advocated for universal schooling for all children and improved teaching methods for deaf students. Pretty amazing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, reading that reminded me. I had a Quaker professor when I
Uh-huh.
was at the School of Social Work, and I just brought back that feeling of inclusion
Yeah.
and compassion.
Yeah.
Um, and he introduced me to the Quaker tradition, and I got
Right.
to experience that in a way that I didn't. I had prejudice against that, or an unknowing, right? Like, thinking that it's simple or non-progressive, and it's not. So
Right.
there's so much to be exposed and shared
Right.
when we come together without limitation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I brought this part up because I'm going to read something from a statement from Governor Greg Abbott to give you a sense of what detractors are saying about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. So this is dated February 4th. It's from the office of Greg Abbott. It was penned by the chief of staff, his chief of staff, Gardner Pate. And he says, federal and state law prohibits discrimination against a current or prospective employee because of that person's race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, or military service. This legal protection covers the hundreds of thousands of individuals who are employed by the state of Texas, including everyone who works at your agency. As Texans, we celebrate the diversity of our state and the presence of a workforce that represents our rich culture. In recent years, however, the innocuous sounding notion, whew,
Mm.
I'm trying to get through this, y'all, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, has been manipulated to push policies that expressly favor some demographic groups to the detriment of others. Indeed, rather than increasing diversity in the workplace, these DEI initiatives are having the opposite effect and are being advanced in ways that proactively encourage discrimination in the workplace. Illegally adding DEI requirements as a screening tool in hiring practices or using DEI as a condition of employment leads to the exclusion and alienation of individuals from the workplace. And that's all I'll read for that.
Mm.
Woo.
It's like a mind trip, right? It's like
Right,
using the whole
right,
purpose of it, what we're achieving, and twisting that to say that this is what this is causing, right? Like
correct,
it, yeah. And I
correct.
think that that's very confusing to people if you just glance at it.
Hmm.
And that's what it's meant to do, is
And
confuse
so,
us.
and so, the 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 question that you have to ask, and I'm going to go to my journalistic unbiased, well, of self, I'm a little biased, but anyway, the question that you have to ask as we going to in our break here is, who does Governor Abbott believe, as well as others, who do they believe that DEI and I'm going to use A in here too, policies are discriminating against?
I personally don't think Abbott believes that they're
I don't
discriminating
either.
against anyone,
I don't
but
either.
I do believe that it's meant to insinuate that white men who have had the most exposure and
Hmm.
experience over the years are being discriminated against in order to keep us focused on kicking down. Like, that's what it's always.
Hmm.
Let's put somebody, below us that's in the way of our success.
Correct.
And if we focus on that, we're not focusing on our own individual personal development,
Hmm.
right? It's the world that's out to get us, not we didn't achieve this.
Right. 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 Exactly. Exactly. So those are the things. That's like a question you have to ask yourself, everybody. That I think that is important, which is, who are they discriminating against? If the policies are there to make our workplaces, specifically in this case, as well as our schools, more look like more of our communities, right? Then who
Hmm.
is it discriminating against? Is it,
Right. So, I mean, I think that the perspective, and let's talk about that, because then I think it confuses people.
yeah,
But so, say a white male is applying and they're equal,
right,
and then it's probably going to go to the person of minority,
right,
which in an individual situation, it could feel like they got the bad stick,
right,
right? Or
right,
whatever,
right,
But when you look at the bigger picture, in that there's still a higher percentage of that population in all positions. And it's not that they're now being discriminated against, it's that they're not being favored.
right, right,
And that rebalancing. And I think when we reach a point, then there is a point where when our society is equal and people are treated equally, then all of these things wouldn't need to be considered.
right,
And that's the ultimate,
right,
but we're not there yet.
right.
And we have to figure out a way to help ourselves get there.
Absolutely. 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 Um, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, let's talk a little bit about, what are the possible ramifications of not having DEI in in policies and our employment practices in our schools. Let's talk a little bit about that, because we need to know, what will be a life without all these kinds of laws and regulations. So we'll be right back in like maybe 45 seconds.
Hi there, Sheila Applegate here with some exciting news. I've joined the incredible Soulivity team as the host of the new Consciously Awesome live show, where I will be sharing insights to help you discover your full brilliance and claim the vibrant life you deserve. So tune in every Wednesday right here on Soulivity TV to join the fun, and remember to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode. Have an awesome week, and I will see you on Wednesday.
Yeah, and that's coming up tomorrow, where Sheila, you're going to be talking about beliefs at 12 noon.
Yes.
That's going to be a good show. Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah. How
Listen,
to upgrade our
I
beliefs.
know, right? Listen, everybody, let's talk about the ramifications of this, in terms of, this war on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And let's say everything kind of goes away. Well, doesn't that bring us back to where we were, not even 60 years ago? Where does
Mm,
this end, right? Um,
right.
do you believe that, um, separate is equal? Because that's what we're really talking about here, right?
Right.
That you can have, you know, separate employment situations, where everybody's in silos, and because everybody's
Hmm.
working, is that okay? And to be clear, the more well-paying positions, and that may change outcomes around social economic status, those jobs are going to go to the people who have historically been more educated and more privileged. And so who is that?
Hmm.
Right? does
Right.
it does it matter that there are, some families in other groups, based upon race, gender, sexual orientation, and alike, that do have some money, they will still be the minority of the minority of the minority of all people, specifically in those groups. So is that the kind of world that we want to live in? And so we got to ask that question. And again, if you think that that is not true, we've already lived through it. If you know your history, after the Civil War, we had Reconstruction. And there were many people just using African Americans as a barometer. And Sheila, I want you to get in on this as well. We had actually minority representation in our local, state, and even federal governments. That existed after the Civil War, where you had Black people actually in Congress.
Mm-hmm.
That lasted
Right.
about 60 years. And then when there was this war against, again, the beginning of Jim Crow, all those people disappeared.
Yeah. So we're talking a cycle that maybe are we repeating the same cycle, or is there a minority of people trying to push us back into that? And
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
I guess we have to approach it from both being a possibility, right? We have
Mhm.
to look at that from the past and know we do have to keep our, our heels in the ground,
Right.
like don't move,
Exactly.
We need to hold steady and move forward, but we also need to not get caught up in always putting out a fire so we forget the bigger picture and we don't have time to move. If the people who are wanting to progress are constantly distracted and called to put out a
Yeah.
fire, how do we progress? And so I think maybe it's that we have to take turns, right? Like when something hits,
Right,
then
like,
that's
yeah.
your action time. Well, the rest of us keep moving forward. And then, when something hits close to home for me, like that's my action time. And trusting that a group of us are continuing to move
Well,
forward.
that was I'm glad you brought that up, because historically, that is the reason why you had different organizations formed under civil rights. You had the ACLU, you had the Southern Leadership, the SCLU, you had the NAACP, right? And so the ACLU was there, especially like the gosh, I'm trying to think of the oh, I'm it's too early in the morning, y'all. There was a form out of the NAACP, the Legal Defense Fund, right?
Uh-huh.
Where they were the ones that would basically be fighting against laws that would pop up, right? And so, like this law in Texas, for instance, you know, uh, if this had happened back in the day, the Legal Defense Fund would probably be out there, filing a lawsuit, and this is discriminatory, da 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 da, and fighting against it. But that didn't mean that there were other groups that were lobbying Congress to pass new laws to make sure that that wouldn't happen again, as well as
Right.
other community-based groups that were showing the positivity of having a diverse and inclusive and equitable kind of America. So there was all these different things. But again, when you have this kind of onslaught of different laws happening, I mean, this is Florida, Texas, of course, and I think it's in one other. I think Oklahoma and South Carolina are also doing this, and it's just kind of interesting that all this is happening in the run up to a presidential election.
Oh, right. Because it's all part of that, right?
Right.
So we have one side of politics, one group of politics that is only focuses to keep the status quo or go backwards or,
Right.
hold and not progress. And then you have the other side that is about progression, but progression includes all the diversity, includes all the different aspects, looks at all the positions. And so it's easy to, uh, well, it has been in the past easy to divide those and confuse those people who are trying to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
but if we can find the unified understanding that we want equality and inclusion and diversity, we want a world that's good for all people, then maybe we can, under that umbrella, move forward in small areas as well as the big picture. Is that making
Exactly.
any sense? I've got it in my head
Absolutely.
now. I'm like, okay.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a great article that I found that talks about like all of this. Oops, wrong one. Is it here? Did I upload this thing twice? I guess I did. Anyway, I'll find it and I'll put it into the chat. But it talks about like all these different things. It's an insight into diversity. Um, and there's this great person, Pat Heinzelman, president of the Texas Faculty Organization, where she talks about the fact that, given that most accrediting bodies require some form of DEI commitment in practice, including diverse hiring and recruitment, public colleges and universities in both states could potentially lose such accreditation. So that's one thing, right? There's now a conflict between the federal and the state government, which is
Right.
what they wanted anyway. This in turn will have a major impact on federal and foundation funding as well as the institution's reputation. These policies will also make it harder for schools to recruit and retain faculty and students, especially those from marginalized backgrounds. The impact will be that fewer minorities are hired. Some Texas universities have tremendous numbers of Hispanic and Black students as part of their population. They need educators of their own race who can sincerely relate to and who can serve as role models.
Right. And we need it for education too.
Absolutely.
I was thinking
Period.
about, because in one of the articles we were reading, it was talking about how, you can't even teach different cultural classes and diversity.
Right.
And how do you do that? I'm thinking I went to school for social work. You can't do that job without exploring diversity and
Right.
different culture identities and the effect of all of these different aspects of humanity. You can't serve them. And then I thought about, how do you have a political science degree without exploring that? How do you have medical
Absolutely.
degrees? Like,
Yep.
you can't serve our communities if you don't learn about the various sub-communities within it.
To that point, Marlo Crosby, the vice president of the United Faculty of Florida, and students for for a Democratic Society, wrote this beautiful paragraph, and I'm just going to read it that relates to what you're saying. Says they, which are these people who have pushed forth these laws, have told people of color and others our history is irrelevant and that our stories are not worth telling. They have told LGBTQ plus individuals that our identities are not of value to this nation and that our perspectives are not to be respected. They have told us that our education should be filtered, that our learning should align with the interest of the fascist policies and corporate elite that govern this state. I am Black and queer, and I'm a student on this campus, and I'm sick and tired of being told what to do. Ron DeSantis, which is the governor of Florida, and many like him have threatened us before, and now they're on our doorstep. So it goes again I mean, this is a young woman who is there at the University of Florida, where again, this is the same type of policy that's happening there as in Texas, where diversity and equity and inclusion and accessibility will go away as part of
Right.
hiring practices, where people like Marlo, who look like her, won't be represented on campus. And so if she has a specific question in for a course, for instance, that relates to how culturally she relates to a subject, and this person is a white male, they don't know how to answer that question.
Mhm. Especially
And-
if they haven't had exposure to other populations.
Correct. And if you think that those kind of questions or those kind of perspectives don't come up,
Mhm.
I would say go back and read these articles that we
Right.
posted, because it's absolutely positively true that they do.
You know, I was thinking about my friend Diane Shenandoah got a position at Syracuse University a couple of years ago, and it's as an Indigenous healer. And she is, and it's open to all students.
And we
And she
love her.
now does moon ceremonies on the campus, on the quad, and it's
Right.
open to all people. And so, like, what a beautiful experience for people to just be able to have a welcoming, people from all different communities, to have a welcoming space to find healing, to get to know the truth, to
Right.
meet people on a personal and even sacred basis,
Right.
you know?
Right. And again, that's the point, right? That's the point of hiring, making sure that you're hiring into your organization a diverse, equitable, and inclusive and accessible population of staff members, right? As well as
Right.
students who represent all walks of life. I mean, that the Neil Paulus, who we had on the show, talking about something as quote unquote something as simple as lacrosse. Well, lacrosse is actually Native American, right?
Right.
Most people don't know that. They also don't know things.
So really, they should take out the whole lacrosse program if they're gonna,
Exactly.
the sports teams need to go.
Exactly. I mean, if we really are thinking that oh well, we can't have this diversity, right?
Right, then it includes all appropriation, right?
Exactly. Because again, Michelle Shenandoah, when she was on our show, was talking about the fact that, like, our Constitution is grounded in First Nation philosophy.
Right.
How many of you out there actually know that? Right?
Yeah, it's structured completely on the Haudenosaunee.
Right. And so if again, if there's not diversity and equitable and inclusive education, if you are a person, an American learning in school, things become, and I'm just going to be serious, they become whitewashed. It becomes like everything was done by people who came over here from England, and then all of a sudden this beautiful nation was born, and it's been the same ever since, right? That they came up with all the ideas, that they came up with all these different things, and that is simply not the truth. It's just simply not the truth. Most modern convenience items were made by African Americans. Everything from the broom to the mop, to other kinds of things like the stoplight. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on and on.
Right.
Our Asian American brothers and sisters, the Vietnam Memorial on the National Mall was designed by an Asian American Pacific Islander. Did you know that?
I didn't.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
and it's just, there's so many things that don't come into play when you don't have these policies in place. And I feel very, very strongly about it, because if we want to call this place a quote unquote melting pot, right? It
Mhm.
feels like people are taking out the potatoes and actually, this would be the sausage and
Go to stone soup
right, right.
backwards.
It's just some water with some potatoes in there, right? I mean, you don't get there. You don't get the flavor. You don't,
Right.
and so, I beg people, as we're coming up on our last segment, um, this is something that you really need to get educated on. Because my concern is that, let's say, you know we win in the next 5 or 6 years or 5 to 10 years, these things kind of go away and we're back on track. Well, what happened to that generation or those generations of students that didn't receive the essence and the spice and the flavor of that diversity, equity, and inclusion? Right?
Mhm.
Now they've got to go through, and then they're going to have kids where they're going to tell them a different perspective, and then they've got to learn about it differently in school again. Like, Dad, that's not right. That didn't happen, right?
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah,
so
hopefully, I mean, I see that, and we definitely have to be aware, but it's gonna be harder to restrict education when we have access to the internet and
right.
knowledge. Like, people do it people are working so hard to hide the truth
Hmm.
and the information
Hmm.
at a time when it's impossible to hide it.
Right. Exactly. Agreed. Agreed. Why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, I know unfortunately we're going to go to final thoughts, but man, this is such a powerful conversation. So we'll be right back in about 30 seconds, everybody.
6 years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose, so they could become the best version of themselves, to battle fear and ignorance, and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit soulivity.com now.
Woo, we'll go to final thoughts.
Mm. Well, I think, I want to stick with the same thing because this is one of many attacks that are happening in this war.
Hmm.
And that we want to focus on those, be aware of them while continuing to move forward,
Yeah.
because I do believe that that transformation is occurring. And there's one quote from the article you were just talking about by Baker, and it says that it is critical that students and faculty who have benefited from the DEI programs and initiatives share their experience with state legislators and college administrators and advocate for safeguards. Examples
Mm.
of success demonstrate the clear value and provide a campus. It provides a campus. So if you're one of those people that's saying, "Oh man, this is not good,"
Yeah.
and at the same time, I'm working to move this other part of society forward, it's not going to be a lot to take time to write down your experience. And that's aren't just people who benefited it because they were a person of diversity or minority. It's those of you like me who was on a campus learning about those cultures, and that allowed me to see the world differently. So
Hmm.
if we all can just do that, that would make a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Shoot, I don't even know if I have anything more to say. Um, what I, I will put this statistic out to everyone as we kind of wrap up here. It says nearly 2/3 of students at University of Florida say that DEI and A programs have had a positive impact on their college experience, and that the initiatives are definitely not discriminatory towards students. Of
Mhm.
the respondents, 73% strongly approved of the university offering courses on race, gender, and diversity. 2/3 affirmed that the school's Office of Diversity and Inclusion positively impacted their experience, while 20% stated they had no opinion. So the overwhelming majority of the students at which these programs affect, say, keep them.
Right.
That's all I'm going to say on it.
And
Why don't we move to, yeah, go ahead, real quick.
keep them, we will.
Exactly. Really quick, let's move to some shameless plugs. Of course, we've got to talk about the Energy Healers Oracle. That is
Yes,
available. Really quick, Sheila, can you tell us a little bit about it?
tools of total transformation, and it's 20 different master healers from around the world, including myself and Zach with Fractal Illumination, each talking about a different modality of healing, and you can get that on Amazon.
Woohoo! Yeah, go get it out there. We have put the link in there. Soul Connection sessions are available as well from you.
Yeah, if you'd like an individual soul connection to get a deeper connection to your inner truth and your soul energy, find me at SheilaApplegate.com and use the code SOUL23 to get a discount for Soulivity.
Absolutely. We just put a link to Sheila's Soulivity page so you can get some more information as well. Just want to remind everybody too that on Thursday, there's another Steps to Happiness coming up with Teresa Greco. She's going to be talking about We Are Powerful Creators. So, man, that's a 1-2 punch. Sheila on Wednesday with beliefs. And then you can take that belief into knowing that you are a powerful creator on Thursday. See, I love it. That's the way we do it here. Thank you, Sheila, for this. We're going to have to talk a little bit deeper about this. Maybe we can invite in a panel or something like that.
Yeah, that would be a great idea.
Maybe Michelle Shenandoah can come in and talk a little bit about that. Maybe we can invite Sinead O'Brien of the Racial Fairness Project. She can come in and talk about that. So I'm going to set that up and we can go into a little bit more detail. So listen, everybody, we are out of time. Thanks again for joining us for another great episode of This Morning with Soulivity. Please follow us on social media. We hope that you come back and join us every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern for our live broadcast, or you can listen on Thursday and Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific on KMET 1490 AM radio for all of you all out on the West Coast. Listen, until next time, keep having real conversations with passion and purpose and create a life full of high quality living today. Sheila, I guess we can both say bye. See you next time, everybody.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.